All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going deep on Donald Trump.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
It is. I know a lot of you out there are fascinated by him, right? And our mission is to kind of distill the essence of Trump, right? Like, how did this real estate guy go from building towers to reality TV to, well, the White House?
Yeah, it's quite the journey.
It really is. And we might unearth a few surprises along the way.
Oh, I'm sure we will.
All right, so his early life. Born in Queens, New York, son of Fred Trump, a big-time real estate developer.
Ah, so the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, huh?
Seems like it. It's like he was almost destined for this life of, wheeling and dealing.
Right, and yet you have this interesting contrast with his time at the New York Military Academy, all that discipline and structure.
Yeah, that's a good point. It does make you wonder, though.
What's that?
Well, like, how much of that military school experience actually stuck with him? Because the Trump we see, well, he's not exactly known for restraint, is he?
You're right. But it's interesting because after that, he goes on to Fordham, then transfers to Wharton. Pretty prestigious schools.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Ivy League and all that.
But there's been these claims, right, that he pressured those schools to not release his grades.
Wait, really? Like, keep them secret? Why would he do that?
It's kind of a mystery, isn't it? Makes you wonder what he's trying to hide.
That's a little bit suspicious, don't you think? Like, what's going on there?
It definitely adds to the intrigue, and maybe it even foreshadows some of the things we see later on in his career,
Ooh, I see what you mean. Like this pattern of hidden information and controlling the narrative.
Exactly. Okay, but let's talk business now. Because his business career is, well, it's like a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Ups and downs, for sure. But starting with those Manhattan real estate deals, he was following in his father's footsteps.
He was a big player. I mean, those iconic buildings like the Grand Hyatt, Trump Tower.
He totally changed the New York City skyline. You can't deny that.
You can't. But then his ventures in Atlantic City, those casinos, those are a different story. See, despite early success, those businesses actually filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
Wait, hold on. How many times?
6 times. Between 1991 and 2009.
6 times. That's crazy. How do you even come back from that?
Well, that's the thing. He didn't let it derail him. See, Trump used those bankruptcies to restructure his debts.
So, like, turning a negative into a positive.
Exactly. He maintained control of the companies even though his ownership stake went down.
That's pretty impressive. Or maybe, like, a little bit shady. I don't know.
It definitely makes you think. But then, get this, he makes this huge leap.
Okay, what is it?
He goes from boardrooms to reality TV.
Reality TV.
Yeah.
What? Seriously? How did that even happen?
It's wild, right? But it's actually where his media persona really starts to solidify. Think about his book, The Art of the Deal.
Oh, yeah, that was a bestseller, wasn't it?
Big time. It made him into this larger-than-life businessman in the public eye. The ultimate self-made success story.
Okay, but hold on. Didn't he have someone else write that book for him?
He did. It was course-written. So again, you have this question of authenticity.
Like, how much of the Donald is actually him?
Exactly.
So he writes a book, and then The Apprentice happens. That's when he really hit the mainstream.
Oh, absolutely. That show, it was a cultural phenomenon. He became this symbol of, like, tough, decisive leadership.
He definitely played that role well. And don't forget, he was also on all those shock jock radio shows.
Oh, yeah. Like Howard Stern.
Right. He loved being provocative, pushing the boundaries.
It seemed to come naturally to him.
Yeah.
All this, the deals, the media attention. Was it building towards something bigger?
Like politics.
Well, he had flirted with the idea of running for president before.
Really?
Well, several times, actually. But it was in 2016, that's when he really went for it.
2016, that was a crazy year.
It was. There was this wave of populism, anti-establishment feelings, and Trump, he tapped right into that.
And a lot of people, they just dismissed him at first.
And nobody thought he had a chance. It was like, oh, this is just a publicity stunt.
He was a total outsider. And yet, he wins the Republican nomination.
He did, and then he ran this completely unconventional campaign, provocative statements, constant media coverage.
And those rallies. Massive crowds.
It was unlike anything we'd seen before.
He definitely wasn't afraid to say what was on his mind.
Or tweet it.
Oh yeah, the tweets. Don't even get me started. He was always stirring things up.
He was. Remember those campaign promises? Like building a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border?
Oh yeah, the wall.
Yeah.
And banning immigration from Muslim-majority countries.
Those were incredibly divisive policies.
They were. And let's be honest, a lot of people accused him of racism and sexism.
Those accusations definitely dogged his campaign.
But even with all that, he still managed to pull off a victory.
He did. It was shocking. even though he lost the popular vote.
Yeah, he won the Electoral College. And just like that, he became the 45th president of the United States.
The reality TV star turned politician. Who would have thought?
It was a wild ride.
Yeah.
And it was just the beginning. His presidency, well, that's a whole other story. So Trump's presidency, it was a wild ride, wasn't it? Like every day there was something new, another headline.
It was definitely a time of constant change and upheaval, that's for sure.
Yeah. Remember the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act? It felt like everybody was arguing about that.
Oh yeah, that was a big one. It was a huge legislative win for his administration, no doubt.
But it was controversial, right?
Oh, absolutely. You had corporations and wealthy individuals getting big tax breaks.
Right, which is why some people were saying it would just make income inequality worse.
Exactly. And then there were those who argued it would boost the economy, create jobs.
And others who said it would just explode the national debt.
Yeah, it was a really complex issue with a lot of different perspectives. And then, of course, there was his decision to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Agreement.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. A lot of people were really upset about that.
It was a major policy shift, that's for sure. It basically signaled that the U.S. was putting its own interests ahead of global climate goals.
So, America first, no matter what.
That was the message a lot of people took away from it, and it definitely strained relationships with other countries.
I bet. And what about the travel ban? That was super controversial too, right?
Oh, incredibly so. Targeting those Muslim-majority countries, it was seen as discriminatory by a lot of folks.
Yeah, I mean, banning people based on their religion. That's not really what America's supposed to be about, is it?
It raised a lot of legal and ethical questions, no doubt, and it really fueled the debate over immigration and national security.
It felt like every week there was a new scandal or investigation.
Right. It was hard to keep up.
It was. Like, remember the Mueller investigation? It went on forever.
Years. It was looking into Russian interference in the 2016 election, right?
Yeah, trying to figure out if Trump's campaign had colluded with the Russians.
It was a huge deal. In the end, the report did confirm that Russia had interfered in the election to try to help Trump.
Okay, but what about collusion?
Well, the report didn't find enough evidence to establish a criminal conspiracy between the campaign and Russia.
So no smoking gun.
Not exactly, but it did detail a lot of contacts between people in Trump's orbit and Russians.
Which was still pretty shady.
Oh, definitely. And then you had the whole Ukraine scandal, right? Which led to his first impeachment.
Oh, yeah. That was crazy.
It was about Trump pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, who was his potential rival in the 2020 election.
And he was withholding military aid at the same time, wasn't he?
He was trying to use it as leverage. It was a big abuse of power.
And he got impeached for it.
He did. The House of Representatives impeached him for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress.
But he didn't get removed from office, right?
No. The Senate, which was controlled by Republicans, acquitted him.
So he stayed in office.
He did. But, of course, he was impeached again later on. After the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Oh, man, that was a scary day, seeing those rioters storming the Capitol building.
It was a dark day for American democracy, for sure. And Trump's rhetoric, his lies about the election being stolen, it all played a role in inciting that violence.
Yeah, he kept saying the election was rigged, that there was massive voter fraud.
And there was no evidence of that. It was all lies. But his supporters, they believed him. And some of them, they took things into their own hands.
And that led to the second impeachment.
Exactly. The House impeached him for inciting an insurrection.
But again, the Senate acquitted him.
They did. And even after all of this, even after losing the 2020 election to Joe Biden, he refused to concede.
Seriously, he wouldn't admit defeat.
Nope. He kept pushing those baseless claims of election fraud, which of course further divided the country.
So what's next? What happens now?
Well, despite everything, despite all the investigations and lawsuits he faced after leaving office, he remained a powerful force in the Republican Party.
It's like he never really went away.
He didn't. And then he decided to run for president again in 2024.
And he won a second term. Wow. I guess that shows you the power of Trumpism.
It does. But what exactly is Trumpism? And what does the second term mean for America? That's what we need to unpack now.
A second term. Wow. I guess that really shows you the lasting power of this whole Trumpism thing, huh? But what exactly is it? I mean, it feels like everyone's always talking about it, but I'm still not sure I could really define it.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a feeling than like a specific set of policies, right?
Yeah.
It's this attitude, this worldview that rejects the elites and the establishment, you know?
Yeah, okay, I get that. Like the whole drain the swamps thing.
Exactly. And it's all about putting America first, right? strong national identity, economic protectionism, and just a general distrust of anything that feels too globalist or elitist.
So it's like populism plus nationalism with a dash of I'm not going to be politically correct.
You got it. And that's what made Trump so appealing to a lot of people, you know? He tapped into those anxieties about globalization and cultural change. He spoke directly to those who felt like they were being left behind.
And he was really good at connecting with people, right? Like those rallies were huge. I mean, love him or hate him, he was a captivating speaker.
Oh, he was a master of communication for sure. Simple language, powerful slogans, and he didn't shy away from conflict.
Oh, he loved a good fight.
Yeah.
But you can't deny that his rhetoric was incredibly divisive.
No, you can't. He was constantly attacking the media, calling his opponents names, using language that was often inflammatory and offensive.
And that's what worries me. Like, what's the long-term impact of all this? Does this style of politics, this Trumpism, does it stick around even after he's gone?
It's a big question. Some people think Trumpism was just a blip on the radar, a reaction to a specific moment in time. Others think it's a more fundamental shift in American political culture.
So, like, is it here to stay or is it just a passing phase?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think anyone really knows the answer yet. We'll just have to wait and see how things play out. But I think the most important thing for us, for all of us, is to stay engaged, right? We need to think critically, challenge misinformation, and be willing to have those tough conversations, even when they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because ultimately, it's up to us to decide what kind of future we want to create, right? Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into the world of Donald Trump. It's a complicated story for sure, but hopefully this conversation has given you some things to think about. Keep learning, keep asking those tough questions, and most importantly, keep talking to each other.